We know we're supposed to be flourishing. There's like a remnant of the garden in our minds. And it's why we get so disappointed when life isn't what it could be. When God is there to redeem our disappointments and to make them purposeful and to make them beautiful and, to switch it all out. But we look at life and the enemy is at work, stealing, killing, destroying. And we're like, yep, that's about right. Life is life. And it's like, Jesus promised us something different and something more. And that is a life lived on purpose, flourishing as in the garden, but on earth.
This episode of I Work For Him is sponsored by SaferNet, Patriot Mobile, and the U.S. Christian Chamber 2026 Expo, found online at swc2026.com, code I Work For Him. You've tuned into I Work For Him, 13 years of covering the faith and work movement.
We are your hosts, Jim and Martha Brangenberg, and our mission is to release the testimonies of workplace believers who have learned to unleash their vocational and cultural contributions for the flourishing of the world. What can that look like in your workplace? Well, let's find out right now.
Do you have purpose in your life? I mean, where does the purpose come from? How does that purpose play out in your daily job? How do you find out what your purpose is? And how does our understanding of our purpose help the world around us to flourish? Our guest today is Dr. Jessica Rimmer, who's just released a book called The Purpose Formula. This is a power-packed, hard-hitting book focused on helping you to unleash your understanding of your purpose so that God can use you more effectively. Jessica Rimmer, welcome back to I Work For Him.
Thank you. So good to see you both.
All right. So, Jessica, you open your book by saying God proclaimed that human beings had inherent value because of what he had done, not because of what they had done. Why is this understanding so important to our conversation today and the pursuit of purpose?
So interestingly, you're referring to the preface of the book, and I wrote that as the very last thing. I had been working on the book, and I was visiting with my office neighbor about the book, and he was giving me feedback. And I kind of had this in the middle of the night insight. I was like, oh, one more thing. I think it's really important for people to know that your purpose, like that's a gift that God gives you. It's something that he flows through you to other people. You get the participatory joy of having a purpose. But even if you never do anything, because God made you and he has declared you to be valuable, your identity is secure. And so the reason that I wanted to put that in the very beginning of the book, your purpose is not your identity and your purpose is not your job. Those are the 2 points that I make in the very first thing. It's something you bring to your job, but it's not your job. It's because I think that if we put pressure on purpose to tell us that we're okay, then we don't actually get the joy of living it out fully. We're asking something from it that it's not supposed to give. So I think we have to, just sit with the knowledge that we are loved and we are chosen. We are dearly loved, as the scriptures say. And that sets us free to live our lives with purpose.
So you're saying the purpose doesn't give us life, but God gives us life so we can experience life at its fullest and then through that comes naturally purpose that he has assigned to us. I mean,
that's right.
It's the other way around. I mean, it has nothing to do with us. The purpose that really matters comes from God.
That's right.
This is such an interesting conversation because most people, beginning of the year, they're looking at themselves and going, okay, what am I going to do this year? What am I going to accomplish? And you're saying, okay, we have this focus in the wrong spot, right? And I love that we're going to dig into that a little bit more. So one of the things that we talk about a lot in I Retire For Him is how often our purpose is tied to our work and that we get our identity from that. And it's actually threatened when we retire because we're like, now what? Who am I going to be? What is my purpose? So you state that if we fail in our work, it could also threaten our purpose. So if purpose isn't tied to the work, then what is it really tied to?
So this is really why I think it's important for us to understand that our purpose is not our job. It's how we do what we do. So our purpose is something that lives above everything that we do. It's the type of friend that we are, the type of mom that we are, it's the type of worker that we are. And when we understand that God is purposefully working through us, He has the strategic plan. I'm very type A, so I don't mind that God is a planner, you know, that it's His plan. And so I get to play a part in that plan. And so the various jobs that I have, those are what my friend Kat Armstrong would refer to as, those are my assignments.
Mm-hmm.
So the purpose of the military is above the deployment assignment of each individual mission. And so our jobs are kind of that way. I served that university, I served that church, I served that business for those seasons of time. Those were assignments, but above it was the purpose for which God has deployed me onto the planet. And so for me, as you guys know, I talk about my purpose being binding up broken hearts and setting people free. That's not a particular job description that you could find in any business or, maybe you could find it in a church ministry description somewhere, but it's the way that I approach life, and it is the way I show up at work. So it's not something that, oh, I find my purpose outside of work. I hear people say that.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I volunteer with the homeless and that gives me a lot of purpose. That's awesome. I just think that there's a way to find it inside of your work as well, but you bring it to the job. The job doesn't give it back to you.
But so many believers have been told that if they really want their life to count, they need to quit their job and go to work in a church, which is where they get the idea that their purpose is found in their volunteer work and not in their everyday work. And so, I mean, a lot of that is just false theology that's presented or fermented or perpetuated within the local church. And so that's why we're trying to turn it right side up. That's why you need to get a copy of Jessica's latest book, The Purpose Formula. If you're watching us out here on YouTube, you can see a copy of the book, Drive Change with Your Change, by using Project World Impact's Swipe feature, a tool that puts spare change to amazing use.
To get started, visit Project World Impact's website or download the PWI Swipe app and create a free account.
We invite you to choose I Work for Him as your nonprofit of choice. This partnership will ensure that more workplace believers discover that their workplace is their mission field.
Then you'll just enter your card details to link a credit or debit card. You can even link more than one if you prefer.
Just set it and forget it, and still impact workplaces and believers all around the world.
At the end of the month, the spare change from each purchase you make will be calculated and donated to I Work for Him.
It's that easy. No hidden fees, no extra work to do.
You've learned to partner with God in your work. Let's help more people come to that life-changing realization.
Sign up for Project World Impact Swipe today. Jessica, I'm going to put you on the spot right now. Let's just say somebody's listening today and they're like, I want to get a copy of that book. Are you willing to give away a copy of your book to our audience today?
Absolutely. I would give away 5.
Oh,
If 5 people are interested, you can send me their addresses. I will mail them books.
Perfect.
All right, so if you would like to get a copy of Jessica's brand new book, The Purpose Formula, just send me an email, jim@iworkforhim.com, jim@iwork4him.com, or you can also call our 800 number, which is not an 800 number anymore. It's an 866 number, 866-713-9675, 866-713-9675.
And 9675 spells the word work. So it's easy to remember, but I'll put it in the show notes. I want to hang on to that thought as we go through this, that it's the way we go to, you said it way more succinctly, but the overall arching why we do what we do and how we bring it to our work. I was thinking about how Jim's mom was that person who, no matter where she was, sitting on an airplane, sitting in the doctor's office, people would pour out their heart to her. There was something that God created in her that attracted people to her. And so she already was bringing that in her life, but then she went and got training and got her master's in Christian counseling. So, I think of that because she was carrying that already. she didn't have to go get her master's in order to do that work. It gave her an office and an ability to do it differently, but she was carrying that with her. And I think a lot of people don't necessarily see that in their day. So I'm excited to talk about this a little bit more. So Jessica, did you ever struggle knowing what your purpose was or
Yes,
is?
yes. I mean, there was a distinct point in time where I could articulate my purpose. And I recognize now how fortunate I was to be so young when I was able to articulate that. But I talk about purpose as design, desires, and disappointment. It's that third bucket, disappointments, that I think has been so surprising to people to think back about how God has used disappointments to shape them. Well, it was through a season, I tell this story in the book, it was through a season of really deep disappointment and heartache in my own life where I sort of emerged from that darkness with because I know what it feels like to be brokenhearted. And so that I would say is that journey of pain was the North Star to really help me declare this is my purpose and this is what it looks like for me to live my life on purpose.
This conversation is such a great conversation talking about purpose. And the one thing that can really get us off track from our purpose is a problem on our computers that's caused by a virus or another intruder. SaferNet is who we depend on at I Work For Him and at home to protect all of our devices, our cell phones, our laptops, our desktops, and more. Go to safernet.com and let them know that I Work For Him sent you. With this peace of mind, you can get back to your God-given purpose and let SaferNet focus on theirs.
All right, Jessica, so tell us the actual purpose formula. You kind of alluded to it a little bit earlier, but tell us that actual formula. People went to math class, they had formulas they had to memorize. Tell us about this one.
Well, I talk about it as purpose equals design plus desires plus disappointments times the vision for impact, which is really, and when you get to that section of the book, I talked about that as a surrendered vision for impact. You really have to allow God to be the one to decide, what is the vision? How big is it? I think when we chase impact, we lose purpose. And so that,
is that because it gets self-centered then when we chase impact? Does it become more self-focused? Is that why you think that is?
I think so. And I think, I can be just as oriented that way as anybody else. I remember the day I was throwing the party for this book launch, I had a friend come and he was like, "How does it feel?" And I was like, "It feels like nothing." And he was like, "What do you mean?" And I said, "Well, I don't think the book has made a difference yet." So like I am easily tempted to be like, "Man, it doesn't matter and I can't celebrate until I see an impact." But we all know as people who are serving an eternal, invisible God, that He is doing things. He is doing things that we cannot see. And so I think that when we chase impact, we go into our human sight and we lose sight of the fact that God is at work in ways that we can't possibly understand or imagine. What is it? He does exceedingly abundantly more than we could ask or imagine. And so even chasing impact, we are maybe ill-equipped to chase the impact that God would have if we would trust Him. And so I think we go out of faith when we go after the human impact as our primary metric for success.
So purpose equals design plus desires plus disappointments multiplied by God's vision for impact. There's so much, which is why you got to read the book, because it just peels back the layers a little bit at a time. And some of them are painful layers too, when you really look at it, because a lot of us, you shared some painful stories right in the book, which was, I love that when an author can get transparent. One of the things, Jessica, that we talk about all the time is flourishing, because in the garden, Adam and Eve had mental flourishing, had physical flourishing, and spiritual flourishing. And when they sinned, they broke all of that. And Jesus said He came to restore all things, all that was lost in the garden. So flourishing is what God wants us to do. It's what Jesus talked about, that living life to its fullest, abundant life. How our purpose, or understanding our purpose, and flourishing tied together, as you see it.
Sure. I mean, I think that that really is when Jesus says, I have come that you might have life and you might have it to the full. Right before that, he says, the enemy comes to steal, kill, and destroy. And so I think that, God ties purpose to flourishing himself by saying, like, I've come with something unique for you that, is in your DNA. We know in the Psalms, he has knit us together in our mother's womb, that he has numbered the days of our lives. And so I think when we are tuned in to the way that God has made us and the way that he desires to see our lives lived in glorious display of him and his, creative abilities, when we understand that, we are fully alive. And that, I mean, that's the promise. That's what we're supposed to be experiencing. And I think it's why we're so disappointed and why we're so apt to go, man, this is all there is. Because we know that there's something that God has for us. We know we're supposed to be flourishing. There's like a remnant of the garden in our minds.
Mm.
And it's why we get so disappointed when life isn't what it could be, when God is there to redeem our disappointments and to make them purposeful and to make them beautiful and to switch it all out. But we look at life and the enemy is at work stealing, killing, destroying, and we're like, yep, that's about right. Life is life. And it's like, Jesus promised us something different and something more. And that is a life lived on purpose, flourishing as in the garden, but on earth.
We have a church in our little town that has a marquee right on the highway, and they don't change it. But I really am glad that they don't, because it's a constant reminder to me, because it says, God makes messages out of messes and mistakes. And that's part of that learning process of where God has, he purposeful, there are things that come into our life that we can learn from to become more like him. And it's a constant reminder for me, because I'm like, okay, today is a messy day, whatever it is, but I still have a purpose to do. And I just see how that all fits together. And I appreciate the constant reminder out there on that church sign.
It is, and it's so hard, Jessica, to stay on track, to not follow the world's ways, because the world says that our purpose comes from what we do and what we accomplish. Our purpose comes from, it's tangible stuff. But really, that's not it. God really brings our purpose. It's that emptiness we're always constantly trying to fill. People are constantly trying to fill the emptiness in their souls.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Okay, so if I understand this correctly, when we are living out our purpose, when we understand our purpose and we execute that, then everyone around us benefits from it, right?
That's right. Your purpose is not for you, it flows through you.
Mm-hmm.
And so it is fundamentally going to compel us toward other people. That doesn't mean that you have to be an extrovert to live a life of purpose. This is really a message for every personality type. It's going to fundamentally tie us into the community that we are around. So, purpose is something that happens on the other side of us when we are fully alive.
Perfect. Say that again. Say that again.
Purpose is something that happens on the other side of us when we're fully alive. Is that what you said?
Yeah. So,
okay.
Yeah. So, you guys know this, but one of the questions we ask in the work that we do is, what's it like on the other side of me? And it's a question of self-awareness. Am I paying attention? What's it like on the other side of me? And so when we are really living out our purpose and we know our superpowers and we understand the way that God is compelling our hearts and we're allowing him to heal up our brokenheartedness and we're like living dynamically with Jesus in that way, on the other side of that, people can't help but reap the benefits of that overflow, of that purpose.
It's like becoming a 100x leader. It's just if you become 100%, then you can multiply yourself. I love that. If you want to find out more, you can go online at giant.tv. You can find out more about becoming a 100x leader or get that book. What a great book by some friends of Jessica's. Okay, go ahead.
That's right.
All right. So, I love that we're having this conversation at the beginning of the new year. And we love when I know a lot of people either love or hate looking at the new year and what God has in store for them, you shouldn't hate that though. You should anticipate what God is going to do. But speaking of getting things right and doing things in the new year to start off on the right foot, I just want to encourage our listeners to seek God's will. Ask him where you should spend your time and see if he's leading you to join us at any of the faith and work events that we're going to be participating in 2026. They're all listed on our events page at iworkforhim.com/events. And I hope to see you there.
That's right. April, the U.S. Christian Chamber event, and in June, the Faith and Work Summit in Cincinnati. Jessica, one of the things, I'm a little older than you, but one of the things I saw throughout your book, you did a really good job of catching this, is that purpose hardly ever raises somebody to a place of prominence, but often puts them in a place of great service. Why do you think the understanding of our purpose makes it so that it's not about us?
That is such a good question, Jim. And I'm sure you sent that to me ahead of time, but you've stumped me a little bit. Why? Will you say the question one more time?
Why do you think understanding our purpose makes it so that our position is not about us?
Yeah, that's so interesting. I think it's because we really do live in the upside down kingdom. And as much as the world would want to create an exaltation gospel, those of us who are believers, we know that the direction of true greatness is downward. And I was just listening to a sermon last week about that. Of people, the disciples had spent so much time with Jesus, and they still ask the question, which of us is going to be, can we sit on your right and left? Which of us is going to be the greatest? And so like that whole conversation about being great, it's very, very easy to get caught up in it, regardless of how close you are to Jesus. And so I think that like experience changes belief. And so when we experience freedom, then we believe that's the worthy path to pursue. And so I think that purpose gives us this experience of like, oh my gosh, that's the real life I was looking for. I thought that it was at the top of this ladder, but in fact, and listen, the answer to your purpose isn't quit your high powered job and go low. It's internally, the interior space posture of our heart. Are we surrendered? Are we bowed? Are we serving? And have we said, the greatest among us will serve? Mm-hmm. And so I think this is why servant leadership as a whole conversation caught fire, is people, regardless of their relationship to faith, they experienced true freedom. And then it began to change their beliefs and thereby their behavior. So experience, belief, behavior, right? Like that's actually the direction it goes. This is why we have to experience God really, that we can't just convince ourselves in our mind. We have to experience him to hold fast to our beliefs so that our behavior will outflow. And so that's a very complicated answer to your question, but I think that's maybe an answer.
But it's so true, because what you said in the middle of all that, experience true freedom. You can't experience true freedom unless you're serving others. Because if you think it's all about you, you're not going to be free. You're going to be enslaved to that mentality. And that's why this book on purpose is so powerful, because it's not about you. If you're going to follow Jesus, your purpose is going to never be about you. It's going to be about what he has and the designs he has for bringing the kingdom to the earth. And then it's not about you, which is really a concept that we don't see that lived out a lot. I mean, the three of us have met leaders who don't get this, and we've met leaders that do get this. Leaders that truly are transforming organizations, communities that they operate within, because they understand it's not about them. They're just fulfilling the purpose that God gave them to fulfill. And then we've met other leaders who are like, it's all about them, and everybody around them can't stand being around them, but they want to ride the money train all the way up. I mean, it's about the money. It's not about the impact it's made. I think it's so important to recognize the enemy's hand in this. Jessica, why do you think the enemy does not want us to discover and live out our purpose?
I think you all would understand this uniquely. And so anybody who maybe hasn't really experienced freedom in Christ, I would hope they're listening to this. once you experience Jesus and you experience the zest in your soul, the joy in your soul, when you experience, oh, wow, God is using me. God is using me. And this is in your regular, normal job, doing your job well, your work as worship. When you see and you're tuned into that, like there is no deeper sense of satisfaction than to know God, the God of the universe, used me to help that person to change their day, to change their world, to change their business strategy, whatever your job is. And I think the enemy is against it because he wants us addicted to false highs. He wants us going for the counterfeit. And knows that if we live out our God-given purpose and if we're totally convinced, he doesn't have any power over our lives. He doesn't have any power over the impact that we can make on the planet when we are fully surrendered to Jesus.
So good. And again, I just want to remind everybody, we're just touching the surface here, but Jessica has offered to give away up to 5 copies of her book. If you will just email us, I'll put the email in the show notes, but just Martha@iworkforhim.com, and we'll make sure that you get that copy so you can start reading it or support her, go out and buy it, directly. But Jessica, Jim mentioned earlier that, you're very transparent in the book about your own journey and your struggles with understanding your purpose, especially in light of appreciating what you said, your design, unburying your desires, and tackling your disappointments. So what is your purpose, Dr. Jessica Rimmer?
So I talk about it like this. My purpose is to bind up broken hearts and to set people free. And even as I've been doing this, I sense that God is stirring me to maybe add something in the language, but I've been talking about that purpose since I was a junior in college. And that was, maybe the first time that I saw God really take my brokenheartedness, heal it, and then really allow my life to matter for the sake of other people. And my first kind of world of work was college students. And so, man, I got a lot of joy helping students figure out how to live wholeheartedly and how to be free in who they are in Christ and find their pathway into the workforce. And now God has me doing that, in the marketplace, working with business leaders. And it doesn't always look like that. Sounds like I'm sitting with people who are crying. That's not the case. When we think about setting people free, it can be setting them free through clarity, helping them find a pathway forward when they've got a really sticky executive team or they can't figure out, what the pathway to the future looks like in their business. When you get that light bulb in a coaching session, there is a lot of freedom that comes. And that always feels like a blowback of purpose to me. I'm like, there it is. When someone gets the light bulb of clarity, that feels like setting people free. So that is my purpose, and that's somewhat what it looks like in a regular workday.
That's so good, setting people free. There's so many places in our lives where we are still enslaved, and getting people set free. I want to close out the show, Jessica, with a quote from near the beginning of your book, because I just loved it, but I wanted to close out so that's the last thing people hear. You say, purpose is our unique design, working in harmony with the needs of the world. When we understand our purpose, the world around us becomes a better place, doesn't it, Jessica?
Absolutely. And I think we wake up wanting that kind of significance. And through life's experience, we don't find it. And that's what I hope people find as they read the book, is a renewed desire to go on the journey to discover their purpose so that the world around them really can improve, because it will.
Yeah, we often say on the show that as a Jesus follower, everything about you should be changing, and everyone around you should be benefiting from your faith, whether they believe in Jesus or not. That's the kingdom. And when somebody understands their purpose, the way God intended, that's exactly what will happen. Everybody around them starts to just benefit. Jessica, thank you for writing this book. Thanks for coming on iWork4Him to start off our year, 2026. We're grateful. Dr. Jessica Rimmer, thanks for being on iWork4Him today.
Thank you both so much.
You've been listening to I Work for Him with your host, Jim and Martha Brangenberg. We're Christ followers. Our workplace, it's our mission field, but ultimately, I work for Him. This episode of I Work for Him is sponsored by SaferNet.com, PatriotMobile.com/I Work for Him, and the U.S. Christian Chamber 2026 Expo, found online at swc2026.com, code I Work for Him.
Thanks for listening to the I Work for Him podcast with your hosts, Jim and Martha Brangenberg. Please visit iworkforhim.com to learn more about connecting your faith and work, to join the I Work for Him Nation, and to subscribe to our weekly newsletter. While you're there, check out the Tapestry database, a growing directory of faith and work organizations. You can also follow us on social media at I Work for Him to stay up to date and meet our guests. If today's message spoke to you, please subscribe, rate, and review the show on your favorite podcast platform. Your review will launch more workplace missionaries across America. That's I Work for Him and online at iworkforhim.com. I work, the number 4, him.com.